Hello, my crafty friends. Well, today I have a fun fold card idea that I want to share with you that features a little bookbinding technique. Hi, it's Lynn Dunn from Stamptastic Designs. Thanks so much for joining me today. In this episode of Stamptastic TV, I have a fun bookbinding card idea that I want to share with you, and I have 4 different ways that you can use this design technique in your card making. Now, the cards in this video feature the hand-penned petals stamp set from Stampin Up. And the cards also feature die cuts created from the penned flowers dies. Okay, so let me show you how to make a couple different versions of this fun fold card. Okay, so here is the very first card that we're gonna put together. So this is called the bookbinding technique because we're gonna create this little flap here. So notice how this piece is adhered down to the card and we have just kind of a little flap on the front of our card instead of the entire card opening up. So the cool thing about this card is that it is a regular card size. So this is your standard 5.5 by 4.25 inch card front. So we're basically going to be cutting our paper in the same way that we would if we were creating a regular card. We're just going to add an additional score line. Okay, so the first thing you're going to do is you're going to cut a piece of cardstock that is 4.25 inches wide here, and it's 11 inches long. And we're going to do a little bit of scoring. So the first thing you're going to do is just line up your paper, the edge of your paper here, at the 4.25 inch mark. And we're going to make a score line. And then you're going to scoot this over to the 5.5 inch mark, and we're going to create another score line. So this 5.5 inch mark is actually the center of your card. So now I'm just going to fold on these score lines so that you can see what we created here. So we've basically just added this additional score line. So this is that 4.25 inch score line, and the 5.5 inch score line is the center of our card. So we've added this little section, and that little section we're going to adhere down to our card so that we end up with kind of what appears to be like a little book binding along the side of our card here. And then this, we'll go ahead and decorate this card. All right, so the first thing I'm gonna do is I'm gonna add some glue to this little section that we scored. So I'm adding glue in between the 2 score lines here, and that's the section that is going to get adhered down to the card so that we can create our little book binding. So while that's drying, we can go ahead and decorate our card front. So the first thing I did is cut a 4 by 4 inch piece of one of the pattern papers. Now you can use any pattern paper that you have on hand to create your bookbinding cards. Then I cut a 1 by 4 inch piece of a different pattern, and I'm going to adhere this to the top part. The next thing I did is I just cut a 3/4 by 4 inch piece of white cardstock, and I used one of the dies from the set to create this little scalloped piece. So this is just going to go right across the top here just to kind of decorate it. The next thing I did is I just stamped one of the beautiful floral images from this particular stamp set. I created this focal point for my card front. And then I just created a little greeting, which I'm going to add right over here. And then I'm just going to add a little bow. And then for the finishing touch, we're just going to add some little gems here. And that's really it. So that's how I decorated my card. And then on the inside, I'll show you how I did the inside. I just added a little bit of designer paper on the inside, and then of course some of that scalloped paper just to kind of decorate up the inside. Okay, so that's it. Pretty quick and simple, right? So really you're just creating 2 score lines just to create this little binding section on the top, and then you just decorate it like you would any other card. Okay, so the second way that you can use this bookbinding design in your card making is just to create the card in landscape style. So let me show you this one. I'm gonna bring this one back. So this is the portrait style, and then this is the landscape style. So really all I did is just, instead of creating my card in this direction, I just turned it and I created it in this direction. It's the exact same measurements to create the card. I just decorated it differently. So just keep in mind that even though you create it in one way, I created the portrait style, you can always change the look of the card simply by turning the card into the landscape style and then decorating it as desired. And then this is what the landscape one looks like. So I just changed out the floral that I used, and I put my greeting on the inside instead of adding it to the outside of the card. So these are really, really fun, and it's a great way to showcase your designer paper. Okay, this third way that you can use the bookbinding design in your card making is to just cut a different size piece of cardstock. So remember the previous cards I just shared, we used a 4 1/4 by 11 inch piece of cardstock. Well, to create this little card, this little binding, we are going to be using a 5 1/2 by 8 1/2 inch piece of cardstock. So let me show you how to make this one. Okay, so this time, like I said, you're going to be cutting a piece of cardstock. I'm using white cardstock in this case. So it's 5 1/2 by 8 1/2. So we're going to put this into our paper trimmer, and we're going to start out at the 3 inch mark this time. And we're going to score it at 3. And then we'll just scoot this over and score it at 4 1/4. So 4 1/4 inches is the center of this particular piece of cardstock. All right, so I'm going to fold on these score lines so that you can see the difference here. This one's just going to have a shorter section to decorate. So here's what our card looks like. So I'm going to do the exact same thing. I'm going to add some glue in between these two score lines so that we can create our book binding. Next, you're going to cut a 2 3/4 by 5 1/4 inch piece of pattern paper and just adhere it to the card front. So this is on the right side of that score line where our binding is here. And then you're going to cut a 1 by 5 1/4 inch piece of a different pattern and adhere it on that binding so it's to the left of our score line. Okay, the next thing I did is just cut out some floral images using one of the dies from this particular set. And so I've just added a couple little glue dots on the back. So I don't want to adhere this completely down to the card. I want to kind of keep it popped up a little bit. So glue dots work really well for that. So I am just going to crisscross these designs and add them to the front of my card. And then I just created this little greeting. I just kind of want to give you a little tip. So actually what I did is just cut a 3/4 inch wide piece of white cardstock and I stamped my greeting on it. And then I used this die, this little stitched scallop die, and I laid it on each side of my white cardstock to create this fun little design, just to create a little label. It works just really well and it just kind of accents your paper. So just a little tip for you. So I'm going to just go ahead and add this. I'm popping it up with a couple dimensionals. And then for the finishing touch, I'm just going to add a little bit of twine tied into a bow here. And that's it. So really simple, and it's just unique. It just has this unique design, and I just really love this design. Super fun. All right, and here is the very last card. So this is the fourth way that you can use the bookbinding design in your card making. So what you will notice is that it's very similar to the one I just shared. Again, the only difference, I'm going to bring this one back. The only difference is I did this one in landscape style and this one in portrait style. So you can kind of see them here side by side. It's the exact same measurements. So you create the card the exact same way. The only difference is I decorated one in landscape style and one in portrait style. Okay, so there you go. Now you have 4 different ways that you can use this bookbinding design in your card making. And if you enjoyed these card ideas, feel free to download the printable tutorial. You can find the link in the description below this video. Thanks so much for joining me today. If you enjoyed this video, please let me know by liking it and sharing it with your friends. And leave me a comment below to let me know what you enjoyed most about the video and the cards shared here today. Have a fun and creative day, my friends. Take care.